Alright, so welcome back dun sa ating discussions, and we'll start the semifinals by discussing all about these applications. So we're already done with all this stuff, integration stuff, and then Riemann sums, ano pa ba, trapezoidal method. So since we've already understood how we can integrate things or integrands, especially yung mga may special techniques of integration, we can now proceed with the application. So itong application, hindi naman sila nag-involve ng sobrang complicated integration. But the most important thing that we should understand here is all about the application in which we can use integration to determine yung ating mga certain volume, area, or surface area. And of course, kung meron pang higher application to in physics, unit operations, thermodynamics. So yun yung much concern natin for this semifinals discussion. And I think this will be the hardest part in integral calculus. So for the first parts of this, let's say from the area to I think the volume of solid revolution, I'll try to of course record the discussions, but if I could see na medyo nahihirapan yung students, then we can conduct online class for the latter portion para mas maintindihan nyo. Okay. So let's start with all of this. Again, ang didiscuss natin dito is all about arc length, plane and polar areas, surface and volume of revolutions, centroids and moments, work and applications in physics, kinetics, unit operations, thermodynamics, and statistics. So lahat ito is application. So you have to expect na we'll be utilizing a lot of formula here, especially when we're dealing with unit operations. Okay. But the bottom line is we just have to integrate. Okay, so let's start with applications of integration number 1 or part 1, which is all about the areas in rectangular and polar coordinates. So I'll just be discussing yung rectangular coordinates muna, then I'll give an example and then saka tayo mag-polar coordinates. So whenever we have an integrand that is of course yung limits niya is from A to B, we'll always determine the area between these two curves, or of course kung halimbawa single integrand wherein wala siyang another parang area, another curve. So yun lang is the definite integral, parang ganun yung definition niya, no? So meron tayong apat na procedures, general procedures that we have to do here. So ito yung gagawin natin sa lahat ng area. We have to sketch the graph or the area to be determined. So for this case, basta may area, kailangan natin mag-sketch. Actually, kahit sa solid of revolution, nag-sketch pa rin tayo eh. So, yung una yung gagawin, you have to sketch the graph. So, you can always try to check on this site. I think that is just, ano ba yun? Desmos. Ayan, desmos.com. And then, try to write here the formula. So, later on, I'll try to utilize this para gets nyo yung graphing. Kasi yung graphing naman is supposedly taught to you in high school. So I think you already are quite familiar with all of this graphing. So hindi ko na kailangan pang i-require kayo na manually graph yan. So pwede kayong gamit ng graphing calculator para yun na lang yung gamitin nyo for the area. Pero syempre, you have to make sure na you also draw yung number 2, draw a general vertical or horizontal strip and express its area as a function of x dx or y dy. So later, mas magagets siya pag in-explain ko na in detail yung mga steps natin. So for number 3 muna tayo, determine the limits of integration from the figure by finding the intersections. And number 4, integrate to obtain area. So yun yung ating general procedures on how we can solve for the area. So I'll be talking about muna this rectangular coordinates and kung ano ba yung mga sinasabi natin na region between and then under or above. So ganito siya. We have 3 cases, okay? And when we say definite integral, we're actually dealing with the area under a curve and above the x-axis. And this is the perfect representation of that definite integral. So kung mapapansin nyo itong area of region under f, so this is your f. And if you want to find this area under f and then above the x-axis, then that is simply the definite integral of that f. The same thing that goes for g. So yung g, yung below nito would be that area. And then if you try to find the definite integral, then you will be able to determine yung area under that G. So what about if we try to find the area between this F and G? So in this case, in applications of integration 1, we're dealing with areas between two curves, not under just one curve. So yun yung pinagkaiba nito sa definite integral. We're dealing with areas between two curves. And this is that two curves, F and G. So, ang gagawin nyo lang, since ito nga yung area ng F and then ito yung area ng G, so what if you try to subtract yung F dun sa G? So, di ba, pag sinubtract nyo itong G, matatanggal ito, di ba? Ang matitira lang sa inyo is yung gitnang portion, and that is the concept of areas of region between F and G, or between two curves. That is simply the upper curve minus the lower curve dx evaluated from A to B. So, yun lang yung concept ng area. So, yun na yun. So, if you have a continuous, syempre dapat continuous siya, walang breaks. So, limits A to B, so that's A to B, and then you just have to subtract. Okay? Ayun na yun. And then, ano ba yung sinasabi natin kanina sa number 2 na kailangan mag-draw ka ng vertical or horizontal strip or element? So, ito yun. Okay? So, ito yung representation ng inyong horizontal or vertical strip kasi that is where we will try to find the area or draw out the equation of our area. Kasi kung mapapansin nyo dito sa ating representation na yan, di ba, this is a rectangle. That is a rectangular strip, no? So, di ba sabi natin, we have to find the area. So, what do you think would be the area if this is a rectangle? So, di ba alam naman natin na pag rectangle, we have the length times width. So, kung mapansin, what is the length of this rectangular strip, diba? So, diba the length will always be your height, which is actually f of x minus g of x. Kasi this is your height, supposedly. And this, yun, kita nyo naman, given siya eh. And what do you think would be this width? So, diba, this is always the infinitesimal change in the x variable, so that is your dx. That's why the area can be determined using this f of x minus g of x dx. Of course, by this one element lang, diba? And we know naman na we have a lot of vertical element here, vertical strips, diba? Sobrang dami niyan coming from A up to this point B. So what you have to do is to take the sum of all of these rectangular strip. So meron tayo from A going to this small portion going to B. So technically, if you want to find those infinities, and not really infinite, but many sums of this rectangular strip, then we can determine yung, of course, yung integral nun. So, kasi diba, integration is actually yung sum nung napakaraming mga increments. So that is from A to B, and then f of x minus g of x, and then d of x. So that is where this equation was derived. Actually, I forgot to write the x here. So, yan. So yun lang yung equation natin na we'll be utilizing for the area. But there is another one. Hindi pa pala sinasabi dito. Ito. So ito, halimbawa, if you look at this first figure, so meron tayong dalawang equation, cosine and then sine x. So what if you try to find the area between these two curves? So yun lang yun. Just draw the rectangular strip, and ano ba yung nasa taas na curve? That is f of x, and then g of x nasa baba. So that is f of x minus g of x. That's technically sine x minus cosine of x. How about this one? So kung mapapansin nyo, from this expression, we could see that we have areas here na pwede natin makita. But then again, dun sa portion na is 0, 0, nagkaroon tayo ng some little change, no? Kasi yung nasa taas ng ating curve would be the g of x rather than f of x, but that's the opposite thing on the left side. So to be able to address this issue, you can actually partition this into areas. So from this negative 2 to 0, so yun yung first area mo, and then from 0 to positive 2 sa, I'm talking about the x values, no? So you can use that and then just add the two areas. So pwede yung ganong method. So wala naman tayong kaso dun. So, ito na yung general natin. Kasi, not in all cases naman na best method gawin natin is top curve minus bottom curve. Kasi, kung mapapansin nyo dito, what if you try to do top curve and then minus bottom curve? So, we have to make sure na we have two areas dito. Kasi ganito yan. When you're drawing a vertical strip or vertical element, you have to make sure na kahit saan mo i-draw yung vertical element na yun, within that two curves, kailangan nasa taas pa rin yung kung ano man yung nasa taas na curve dito sa inyong equation or dun sa inyong graph. So, from this, diba, if you start drawing a rectangular strip here, lagi ang nasa taas lang yan is this line, diba? And then below nito yung parang parabolic curve na to, diba? But then, if you come to this point that is 2, 1, mapapansin nyo, naubos na yung ano natin yung ating line, which is, sa case na to, yun na lang ding ating parabola, which is itself, diba? Pero nandun na lang tayo sa portion na positive niya. So, in this case, you can just use yung ating x minus 1 minus square root of 3 minus x, kasi dun sa portion na 2, 1, hindi natin masasabi na, or I mean, wala na yung ating line. Kasi dun sa portion na yon, yung ating rectangular strip, yung top curve ng ating rectangular strip is the parabola itself and not the line already. So, yun yung ating kailangan pansinin whenever we draw yung ating mga strips, no? Kailangan from the bottom of that, or from the lowest portion of that curve, going to the highest value of that curve. Kailangan nasa top lagi yung, kailangan nating curve na nasa top and then nasa bottom lagi yung kailangan natin nasa bottom. Like this one. If we try to do a horizontal strip rather than vertical strip, mapapansin nyo, if I try to draw the horizontal strip dito sa portion na to, dito sa may banda dito, diba? And then, meron din dito. So, sabi ko nga, sa lahat ng portion, kailangan mo mag-draw. And then, kapag yung ating horizontal strip is, kung mapansin nyo dyan, diba yung left na itong horizontal strip na to is always this parabola? Kahit saan pa tayo mag-draw, lagi siyang parabola. And then, yung right natin is tong line. So, with this is a better option kasi nga, lahat ng kanya is nasa left and then yung lahat ng kanyang line is on the right. So, yun yung ating another parang indications na what we have to use. So, kasi meron tayong two equations dyan. We can use the top curve minus bottom curve dx from x sub 1 to x sub 2, but we have to make sure na yung ating vertical strip is something like this, no? Kahit mag-draw ka ng vertical strip dyan, nasa taas pa rin lagi yung the same function. But then again, you can use yung right curve minus left curve. So, unahin natin right and then minus left, dy. So, kailangan nito, ang variable y using horizontal rectangles, kailangan naman all throughout is yung ating right curve is nasa ano lagi, nasa may parang right side ng ating rectangular strip and then left natin is the left curve. So, yun naman yung atin if we want to use dy. So, again, yung kanyang equation would be in terms of y. Kaya siya ay dy. Okay, so, ayan. And then, dito na yung discussion ng polar coordinates. So, I think, I'll just solve for an example and then, let's see kung ano yung problem natin dito. Now, we are asked to find the area between the curve y is equal to x cubed plus x and the x-axis bounded by s is equal to -1 and x is equal to positive 3. So, sabi natin dun sa first one is we have to draw the graph or yun nga, draw the graph, no? So, dito sa nilagay ko, ito kasi is ginawa ko talaga siya ng step by step. So, sabi dito sa first one is you analyze the problem. So, syempre, ganun naman talaga. And then, sketch the graph. I'll be using the Desmos site para mag-graph natin ito na mas accurate. So, x cubed plus x. So, we have y is equal to x, or let's say f of x is equal to x cubed plus x. Okay, so ganun lang ka simple mag-graph dito sa Desmos company na. So, ganun lang siya, no? And then, meron pa tayong ibang dito, mga lines na kailangan nating ilagay kasi yun yung boundary niya. So, x is equal to -1. Okay? And then, we also have, ano pa yung isa? And then, let's use g of, sige na nga, x na lang ulit. And then, ano pa ba yung isa? X is equal to 3. Okay, so I hope kita nyo yung ating, ayan. I-zoom out natin para kita nyo. Medyo medyo malayo yung atin from that intersection. So that is yun, 30. And then for this one, we have, makikita nyo kasi dyan yung intersection usually. So that's -1, -2, and then 3:30. So yun yung intersection. But then, if you want to find the area between this curve, sabi kasi natin sa problem, ang kailangan nating hanapin is bounded by x equal to -1, x equal to 3, and then yung x-axis, and then curve x cubed plus x. So, pag sinabi nating bounded by the x-axis, actually, we're talking about the definite integral here. Yun na yun mismo. Pag in-integrate mo siya from -1 to 3, then you're actually finding the area under this, under this curve na. So, ito yung tinutukoy natin na area. So, that's under the curve and above the x-axis. So, that is yun kasi yung given, di ba? But if there are two functions na hindi lang x-axis to, then we might as well have areas above the x-axis or below that x-axis. Okay, so ito na yun. So hopefully malinaw sa atin. And then let's try to solve for it. Sabi dito kasi, we need to determine the rectangular elements. So sabi nga yun, this is subjective to any person. Pero yun nga, ang element natin na pipiliin is always the most convenient. Lagi dapat ganon. So, kung mapapansin niyo dito, if I try to use the vertical element, so mabilis lang naman siya kasi from 0 to, ano ba to? I think 3. So, from 0 to 3, ayun, 3. So, kahit anong vertical element or vertical strip ang i-draw nyo dyan, so, lagi lang nasa taas yung ating x plus x cubed nung ating x-axis na to, diba? So, okay lang yun, no? And that's the same thing that goes for the left side of our graph, diba? But, if you try to draw yung inyong rectangular, yung ating horizontal strip, so, yung ating nasa left would always be this x equal to x equal to positive 3, and then yung ating nasa right would always be this x plus x cubed, and that still makes sense. Parang same lang din naman sila. So, what is the best option? So, it's always up to you. But for this case kasi, since we're dealing with an equation that is we're dealing with a graph that is we're dealing with an area that is above the x-axis and then below the certain curve. So that is, the best option would always be this dx. But it's always up to you, sabi ko. Pwede nyo rin gamitin dyan yung horizontal strip. So remember yung ating equation or mnemonics for this, we have vax. If you're using the vertical strip and then you need to find the area, so that's VA, and then you have x values from that. So kailangan mo ng x values. Pag kasi mayroon tayong isang other method, pag horizontal rectangular strip, so ito yon, you can always use this, but then again, you have to remember yung ating HAY, which is horizontal and then area and then yung ating y values. So I'll be using yung VAX. So diba sabi natin dito, you have to make sure na if you're using yung ating this is the vertical strip, that is yung x, we have the upper curve, diba? This is the upper curve minus the lower curve. Okay? And then, so bakit tayo nag-add dito? Kasi remember, if you try to go back to the original figure, ito yung first area and this is the second area. So we have to make sure na we incorporate those two kasi they are actually different na. So mapapansin nyo, ang nasa taas na curve ng rectangular strip natin is this x is equal to 0, correct? And then, y is equal to 0. And then for this case, yung nasa taas naman is x plus x cubed. So therefore, if you try to construct the area from this, pwede mo sabihin ng area na to is this area 1, sum nito, and then area 2. Okay, and then how do we find the area 1? So that's sabi natin before, area 1 would always be the upper curve minus the lower curve, evaluated from the limits of integration kung saan man tayo mag-e-end, di ba? So di ba hanggang dito yan? Kasi hindi naman natin pwedeng extend dito kasi dito is nasa taas na yung x plus x cubed. So dito lang siya, and then from this x value. So that is the integral from -1 to 0. And then ano ba yung ating upper curve? So that is y is equal to 0. So that's 0. That's minus kung ano ba yung area natin, which is abin curve. So that is x plus x cubed. So this is the construction of that area 1. Okay. And then you add yung ating area 2. So that is the integral from 0 going to positive 3. And then ano ba yung nasa taas? So that's x plus x cubed and then minus 0. So this is your construction of the area. Therefore, the area is equal to negative x squared over 2 and then plus x cubed over, x to the fourth over 4. Okay, and then this is evaluated from negative 1 to 0. Okay, and then yung we add ito, that is x squared over 2 plus x to the fourth over 4, that is evaluated from 0 to 3. So, ano kayo maging answer dito? So, you can just evaluate that and that should give you a value that is equal to 25.5 square units. Okay? Kasi for this case, kasi mangyayari dyan, magiging positive 3/4 dito and then around 3 squared over 2 plus 3 to the fourth over 4. So, the sum would equal to 25.5 square units. Now, that's how simple it is. Kailangan mo lang i-add yung mga areas na hindi kaya ng isang integration procedure. So, ayun, ganun lang siya. And the perfect explanation is also here. Okay, so ito lang din yung ginawa natin dito, no? And we were able to arrive at the same answer. So, what if ginamit niya naman is horizontal strip? So, ganun lang din naman yung concept niya. So, later on, I'll try to use the horizontal strip. But, let's have this mga examples dito, no? So, find the area between the curves y is equal to x squared minus 1 and y is equal to 3 plus ln of x. So, try natin ngayon gamitin yung ating Desmos para mas makita natin ng tama. So, from this, I can write, so magsulat lang kayo ng equation. Let's say, ang inyo is f of x, yung isa, that is x squared minus 1. But you have to make sure na tandaan nyo ha, yung inyong equations. And then, yung isa natin, let's say g of x. And dito, you can always use a different color. So that is 3 plus ln of x. Okay? So this is our graph. So mapansin nyo, we're always dealing with the area between. Kasi sinasabi rin naman sa problem na the area between these two curves. So, ano ba yung area between these two curves? So, ito lang yun. Yung area na netong buong to. So, yun yung ating hahanapin dito. And you can always look at the graph kung saan nag-intersect, no? Pero usually, itong Desmos, binibigay niya na yun yung kung saan sila nag-intersect. And usually, yan. Nakalagay dyan. But again, kung halimbawa, since itong Desmos sometimes rounded off siya sa 3 decimal, but I would always recommend to use 4 decimal places. So, we have to determine muna yung ating point of intersection. So, how do we deal with this, diba? So, diba sabi natin, at any two lines na nag-intersect, you can always determine the point of intersection by equating these two lines with each other. So, from this, we know naman na x squared minus 1 can be equated to 3 plus ln of x, and then just use your press your shift solve function to determine yung ating intersection, and you have to expect na you have two of them. So kung isa lang nakukuha nyo, you have to shift on the memory. So I'll try to use the memory 0 first para makuha yung ating x. So the first x that this calculator would give me would be 0.0183 okay, or 0.0183. And then I recommend you to store the values at, let's say, letter A para ma-preserve natin yung decimal point. And then the other one, I'll try to use yung ating let's say 5, yung ating memory. So galawin nyo lang yung memory, move nyo lang para magbigay sa inyo ng other values. So, yung ating x sub 2, binigay sa akin is 2.1869. Okay? And then, I'll store that to letter B. Okay, so with that being said, kompleto na ako sa ating intersections. I just have to make sure na kita ko yung graph para alam ko kung nasan yung top and bottom curve. So, from this, I'll go back to the equation, and then, kung mapansin nyo, ang nasa top natin is this red. I'm talking about the horizontal strip, kasi vertical strip. So, kasi 'di ba yung sunod natin na procedure upon graphing would be drawing the strip. So I'll be using the vertical strip kasi if I draw the vertical strip at anywhere at this point, laging nasa taas lang yung ating red. But how about if you try to use yung ating horizontal strip? So horizontal strip is also applicable kasi at any point on this curve, you can have yung inyong left being yung red na function, and then yung, tama, red na function, then yung right mo is at yung black function. So later on, I'll also solve using the horizontal strip. But first, let's use the vertical strip. So ito muna yung vertical strip mo. Okay? And then yung upper curve mo, di ba sabi natin, if you're using the vertical strip, you have to use the x values. And then the x values here is that yung upper curve mo is yung inyong red, and then yung black mo would be the lower curve. So syempre, if you try to write the equation of the area, that would be the area integrated from this value to that values, that is 0.0183 to 2.1869, evaluated, integrated yung ating upper curve, that's 3 plus ln of x, and then subtract natin ngayon yung ating lower curve, that's x squared minus 1, and then close natin sa ating integration of variable, that is dx. Okay, and then you can just integrate this. So we have 3, so that becomes 3x, and then plus, so what is the antiderivative of ln of x dx? So alam naman natin na yung ating ln of x is done using integration by parts. So kung medyo familiar na kayo dito, ang answer dito is x ln of x minus x, okay, and then minus x cubed over 3, and then minus or plus x. Okay, and then this is evaluated from this limit, 0.0183 and then 2.1869. Okay, so hindi ko na ipapakita yung process ng substitution. You can just do that on your own kasi tapos na naman tayo sa definite integral. So the area for this case would be 4.8039, yan, 4.8039 units squared. Okay, so ayun ang ating answer for this problem. I'll give you a special permission to use or utilize yung integration function nyo sa calculator. Kasi diba, this on the definite integral, parang hindi ko ata siya inaalaw kasi before, dun pala kayo nag-start mag-definite integral. But for this case, I am thinking na i-allow ko na siya kasi I'm much more concerned on how you find the area under the curve. So, hindi na necessary talaga dito yung it's necessary for you to integrate, pero syempre, I'm much more concerned with your ability to determine yung ating upper and lower curve. So, for this case, I will allow the direct integration method using the calculator, but you have to show the equation, itong construction ng equation na to, before you try to use your functions in the calculator. So with this kasi para dumali yung ating semis kasi with the current setting that is online, and of course I know naman na medyo mahirap din pagka talaga walang face-to-face discussions, especially this application. So I'll try to lessen the burden. So ina-allow ko kayo ngayon na gumamit ng integration method using the calculator. So direct integration yun. You can just type this 0.0183 or nakasort nyo, that's B, and then yung A, or A tapos B, and then just type this 3 plus ln of x minus x squared minus 1, and then press equal. So you should be able to get this 4.8039. Okay, so I think doon. Pero siguro may mga times na hindi kayo allowed, lalo pa pag kailan ba mga hindi allowed. Basta later on sa topics may mga certain na hindi kayo allowed kasi nga it's impossible to use that. Pero for cases like this, kung kaya naman siyang gamitin, edi much better kung kaya. But don't forget to integrate. I mean, you can use that, pero syempre, you always have to kind of practice your integration nyo pa rin. Kasi baka malimutan nyo na dahil nga may ganyang method. So, wag naman sana, no? From time to time, you try to integrate as well para guess nyo kung paano siya sinosolve. Pero, if the problem says na you're not allowed to use this function in the calculator, then you have to make sure na you integrate manually, and then you try to substitute manually then. Kapag sinabi ko sa instruction, specific instruction na bawal talaga siyang gumamit. Okay? So that's it for the first problem. And siguro, and then sabi ko nga pala is gagamitin natin yung horizontal strip. So let's do the horizontal strip. Now, sabi natin sa horizontal strip, kung matatandaan nyo, the area, i-zoom nga natin to. Nahirapan tayo dito na zoom out. Okay, so Sabi natin sa horizontal strip, wait lang. So, yan. Diba, horizontal strip. Kailangan pag nag-draw kayo ng strip, you have to make sure na yung lahat ng strip na yun would be the same lang. Kung nasa left yung isang curve, then all throughout, kailangan nasa left siya. So, sabi natin, if you're using the horizontal strip, you have A is equal to the right curve minus the left curve, okay, and then dy, okay? And this is evaluated from C to D. And then yung C natin and D natin is in terms of Y. So, from this case, we have to make sure na ano ba yung ating right curve. Yung right curve natin is yung black, so that's x squared minus 1. But we have to make sure na that is in terms of y. Diba this is actually y is equal to x squared minus 1. And then this red here is actually 3 plus ln of x. That is also equal to y. But we have to make sure na if we're using the horizontal strip, we have to make sure na kailangan in terms of y ating equation. But in this case kasi, in terms of x siya. So we have to transform this in terms of y. So that is x squared is equal to y plus 1, wherein x is equal to plus minus the square root of y plus 1. So I hope it makes sense for this case, no? Kasi kung mapansin nyo, kailangan kasi na in terms of y siya, and we have to do the defining for this para maging y lang siya. Now, how about yung ating this one? So that's 3 plus ln of x. So transposing 3, so we have y minus is equal to ln of x. So our equation in terms of x becomes e raised to y minus 3, and this is equal to x. Okay, so that is how we solve for our equations in terms of y. And then, ano ba yung ating C and D? So, yung ating C and D, or y sub 1 and then y sub 2, would be equal to the values of y and the values of y when x is equal to this particular value. Yung, kung mapapansin nyo kasi, di ba, nakadetermine tayo ng x and ng x values and in-store pa natin sa calculator. So, ito yung ating x values. So, instead of x, we'll be using y, which is actually negative 1 in this case. And then, for this naman, that's 3.782. So, from our equation, we have negative 1 kasi negative 1 na to. So, you can use negative 1. And then, kung halimbawa, meron tayong value that is, you can use, pwede nyo gamitin kahit alin dito equation kasi that will just be the same. So that's, I'll be using x squared minus 1. So that's b squared minus 1. So that gives me 3.78. So let's check kung same. Okay. So that is 3.7825. Okay. Then I'll store it to my calculator. Okay. And then you can integrate this from right minus left curve. So that is the integral from negative 1 to 3.7825. And then, right curve, ano ba yung right curve natin? So, that's x squared minus 1, but of course, that is written in terms of y plus 1. So, ano ba yung kukunin nyo? Positive or negative? You look at the graph again, and then, di ba, meron tayong parabola opening, almost like a parabola opening upward, di ba? Or parabola nga siya, opens upward. So, ano ba yung gagamitin natin? Di ba sabi natin, when you have a parabola that opens upward, and then you try to divide or ano ba yun? Partition that into parts wherein meron ka left and right symmetric. So yung right side mo would be the positive side and then yung left mo would be the negative side kasi kita niyo naman na nag-cross siya dun sa parang ano natin y-axis natin. So from this, you use the positive portion of this graph, so that's y plus 1 square root. And then you subtract yung left, that is yung red or red functions. That's e raised to y minus 3. And then that is dy. Okay, and then you just use your calculator to integrate this para mabilis tayo. But sabi ko nga, pag ang instruction natin is bawal gumamit nun, so you have to manually integrate this. Okay, so ito naman is ano lang y plus 1 raised to 1 half. So basically that becomes I think 2/3 and then y plus 1 raised to 3 halves. So ganun lang naman to, and then minus, I think this is e raised to y, so that's e raised to y then, and then that is multiplied to so parang ganyan lang din naman siya. E raised to y minus 3 din siya. Okay, kasi actually hindi pala, no, kasi that is actually e raised to y times e raised to tama pala. E raised to y minus 3 din to. Okay. So, kasi pag dinifferentiate yan, magiging in-integrate, e raised to y minus 3 din yan. So, ayun. So, evaluated from -1 to this 3.7825. It should give you the same answer. So, kailangan same lang yung answer dyan kasi pag hindi, edi mali tayo ng ginawa, ano. So, yan. While waiting, I just have to inform you na there are times na better option yung vertical rather than horizontal kasi isang beses ka lang mag-integrate. Or, it's the other way around. Better yung horizontal kasi isang beses ka lang mag-integrate unlike sa vertical. So, it's always up to the equation and the given sa pagpili. But the best option would always be that it is easier to integrate. Pero since nga, allowed ko naman na gamit na kayo ng calculator without integrating this again in the process. So, I think ang magiging choice nyo would always be the easiest or the area na magmi-minimize sa inyo yung, yung parang the number of errors that you have to compute. Okay, so medyo matagal yung ating integration kasi meron tayong exponential function dito eh. So you have to expect naman talaga na tumatagal yung integration procedure ng calculator kasi syempre, magkakalculate pa yan eh. Pero kung natagal lang kayo, pwedeng i-manual nyo na. The area is actually 4.7856 minus, so basically ima-minus lang natin yung negative, so that's negative 0.01815. So yun lang yun. This should give me the area that is equal to 4.8039. And that is the same answer, I believe, dun sa ating nakuha kanina. That's 4.8039 as well. So, kung mapapansin nyo, you can always use the right or the left, the horizontal or the vertical strip, and you should be able to get the same results as well. Kasi nga, same lang sila supposedly talaga dapat. So, let's just check then kung talaga nga nakuha natin. Okay, so yan, 4.8039. So, ayun, same lang din naman.